How things go here. Gotta make sure we're all looking good. All right, looking good. All right, just gonna wait just a wee little bit of time here. But yeah. So if you guys don't know right now, I'm gonna be doing live stream reviews. I've just thought about this. I don't know if it's an actual thing or not. I honestly do not know, but I thought it'd be really, really cool and neat to actually try out and do some live stream reviews. It's also awkward enough for me because I don't really come on, camera often or anything like that. So, trying to do a little bit more, be more proactive, not just here on Twitch, also on my YouTube. For those of you who do miss this live stream here, I will be importing it towards my YouTube, which you can find it under the exact same handle I have here for Absolute Nerd. I still don't know how I'm going to go by my name here, but you can just call me the nerd. But yeah, so I'm going to be doing my review of Mobile Suit Gundam. So bear with me. I have some little fun things here and there, so I'm just trying to just keep it all entertaining and interesting here. I cannot see the live stream at the moment, so please save your comments for after the review here. But yeah, let's go ahead and get on with the show here. So I just want to talk about, of course, Mobile Suit Gundam. But what is Gundam here? So let me just... there we go. All right. So Mobile Suit Gundam is basically the granddaddy of all mecha anime, or at least in the sense of real robot series. The original Mobile Suit Gundam aired on April 7th of 1979. Since then, the Gundam series has flourished in over the span of 40 years. 30 different movies, series, and OVAs. I didn't call it OAVs, OVAs. Oh my lordy. Look at all these. Look at all these. And that's all. That's just to say, this is just a portion of what I have. I mean, this is not all of it. And keep in mind, I will be reviewing all these Gundam series. I will not be able to review all of them, though, because some of them have not been translated or been brought over to the States. And, yeah, I mean, review little duds like this. G-Savior. Okay, honestly, it's not that bad of a movie. A lot of people dump on that, but hey, this review is not about that right now, but I just want to showcase a little bit of I'm going to be reviewing a lot of this. But yeah, the original Mobile Suit Gundam, because of what it did, spanned over the course of 40 years or more. I haven't done the actual math here, but a ton of series. Now, back to the original, talk about the original Gundam. I keep saying original. That it's kind of funny. I'm going to put it this way. I think a lot of Gundam fans, such as myself, would concur with this. Is that the original Gundam is also known as the Star Trek of anime. I say this because just like the original Star Trek originally, and not saying that Star Trek had 52 episodes, but the original series of Gundam was to run for 52 episodes, and it was cut short due to bad ratings, and it was cut down to 43 episodes. For the case of this review, too, we will only do 42 episodes because I am not reviewing the lost episode of Dawn's Island, which is terrible filler. But anyways, going back to my point, though, is that the series still continued and ran its full course of the 43 episodes. Despite being canceled, the series is able to continue growing forward and complete its entire run alongside with, coming back, or how do I put this? Kind of like Star Trek, the series picked up steam with reruns of the show and grew from there. Because of the reruns, the show gained a lot of its popularity, gained its not infamy is what I'm looking for, but just got a lot more famous and more popular from there. Of course, with the model kits and so forth, the series blew up from that point. Unfortunately, you can't say it when it was initially came out, and then again, with the series, and I'll kind of talk about this in the review too, where the series kind of has its little jinky points here and there. But despite its flawed flight, or its beginning flight, it stabilized and started to soar like crazy and became the huge mecha giant that it's known as today. That being said, more or less, we're going to talk about Gundam. Wait. This is Votoms. If you haven't watched Votoms before, you should watch Votoms. It's actually another good real robot series. Inspired by Gundam in a little bit sense too, but this is definitely something I'm probably going to be reviewing in some time. Yes. A little hint for the future. Anyways, so the original Mobile Suit Gundam, you can find it on Blu-ray at this point now. Again, only covers 42 episodes. And I'll go a little bit further more with that 42 portion and not the 43rd. But I just want to go a little bit of the storyline here, give you guys a little synopsis of what the original Gundam was about. So in Mobile Suit Gundam, in this story, in the Universal Century of 0079, the Principality of Zeon declares war on Earth, on the Earth Federation, to gain their independence from them. The series starts off 9 months after it has been initiated with this war, and both sides are at a stalemate, with many and many lives having been lost. On one of these space colonies, Side 7, give me a second here. On Side 7, a young boy by the name of Omro and several others will have their lives changed forever when Zeon discovers that the Federation's newest mobile suit prototype and battleship are actually stationed there. Now, throughout the entire series, we kind of follow our little hodgepodge crew of civilians and Greenhorn military personnel in their desperate survival of a war that has been, survival for, put it this way, the desperate fight to survive in a war where they had been dragged into and thrown into, quite literally, in different perspectives in different ways. So I think that's kind of a fun little thing that was put into this. Let's see here. I'm just like kind of going through my notes. So yes, I got my little things here and there. That being said here, I have some of my preliminary thoughts and so forth, but I just want to kind of like narrow it down. Now I want to talk about that 43 to 52. So something that was really, really hard when watching this series is that once going through it all, getting towards the last handful of episodes, everything about the series was great with its pacing and how it was told and how it was put together. But the last, I want to say 7 episodes, because you kind of feel it, starts getting very crunchy. And you kind of notice this, and it's going to be kind of a habit with some of the other Gundam series that I will be talking about. But this is when the studio knew that they were going to be canceled or they're running low on the budget. There's actually another story about it where they got permitted fundings where they can continue, because originally it was going to get canceled at the 39th episode, but they got enough funding to go a few more episodes, and that's where we got the extra 4 more episodes to do 40 to 43. Or I'm sorry, that'd be for 40, 41, 52, 43. Yeah, 4 episodes. For some odd reason, it sounded like 3 episodes and not 4 episodes. But with that, that little portion, those 4 episodes, alongside with a little bit before that too, got very crunchy with its storytelling and ham-fisting a lot of the new type concepts, the whole Char's anger against the Zabi family and so forth. So it kind of got very rushed. That's the one thing I wanted to mention about the series that came up very, very first fold for me, was just that annoyance of its rush. Other than that, the entire series felt very well paced. I'll bet the beginning is very, very hard to start off with. So other than that, the animation is one thing I want to talk about. Have you already noticed? Like, I'm trying to use some of the stills. This is what took me so long to get my live stream up. If you can't tell, I have a script a little bit right here, and then I was also trying to pull up images of the series. I literally just finished watching it today, probably my 6th or 7th time watching the original series, and I just want to get this out while it's fresh in my head, while I had reviewed it. And I'll talk a little about this down towards the end of my review. But the animation of the series, of course, is dated. Very much so like a lot of the animes in the 70s and so forth. Not so much akin to like Speed Racer or Kimba the White Lion. It has its datedness, as you can see like in this screenshot right here. Another thing that's very, very irritating about the animation is some of its inconsistencies. You notice Fat Gundam and Skinny Gundam. Heyo! But this is something that gets occurring throughout the entire series, and it's not just the Gundam too. There's also animation shots of like ships, other suits like Zaku's, Dom's, even Gelgoog's, where they kind of seem either fat or skinny, like they got shot with a shrink ray or an expanding gun, you know. So some of the animation can be very, very irritating, and I don't know how to put it. I mean, like, it is what it is. It was back then, especially when they're trying to get with the budget itself. But throughout, though, the series animation doesn't get too wonky. I just want to point out that there was a couple of moments where it is like that. Another thing that gets really, really annoying about the series that kind of grits on me is this. The first 11 episodes or so, you get the prelude, this kind of like introduction into what you're watching, as if you didn't already watch it. I kind of want to say it's kind of like a comic book kind of a thing, where you open up the first page and it gives you that little text of like, hey, this is what's going on of the overall story. Not so much so it's catching you up, but it kind of does that too, where it's the narrator telling you about, you know, like the space colonies and then the people who died in the war and the war itself. I'm like, it rolled on. They do this for 11 episodes. I actually kept count on that one. I lost count. And then they did something very similar with the G-Armor docking with Omro and Ryu. As much as that one annoyed me, it didn't annoy me as much as the space colony conversation. And again, allude a little bit more furthermore as we continue in our conversation or in this review. But those two things particularly annoyed me a lot. Another thing too that was kind of annoying was the dubbing. Now, I watched this in the US dub. I did not watch it in Japanese. I'm not going to get into that argument about which is better, dubs or subs. But I watched the original Gundam dubbed on Toonami way back in 2000. So I'm used to the English voice actors in the original Gundam. I actually am very fond of them. So, you know, me rewatching this again, I really do enjoy everybody. But the first episode, I will agree, where everyone kind of goes like, well, it kind of sounds weird or wonky. Not gonna lie. Some of the acting kind of feels stiff, or they weren't too sure about their character. They didn't have a feel for their character. I noticed this more with like Omro or with Bright, even at times with Mirai. Their voices were kind of like a little like not sure about their characters. But beyond the first episode, and when we get to the second episode and onward, of course, I feel like it's at full steam. Like everybody kind of got the idea of who their character was, or they kind of like finally got into like, I get it. This is how I should be feeling, or how I should be reacting, or how I should be talking as these characters, and it goes full steam. People can give it a lot of flack. Honestly, I love the dub. There are some moments where it kind of reminds me, again, like Speed Racer with Peter Fernandez's type of like speed talking. You kind of catch that at times with Omro's dialogue in some episodes. Not a whole lot, but some, because they're trying to match it up with the shot itself. But overall, I really enjoyed the voice acting. But just want to point out, like, yeah, the dubbing had its fault at the very beginning. And they got that fixed up right away. Other things that was annoying too was inconsistencies or certain types of things that happen throughout the entire series. Some inconsistencies of like characters, not so much as what they say or do, but just like, how do I put it? It's like the look or interactions of certain ones, but primarily inconsistency was a lot of the combat is where I want to get towards. Is a lot of it's like you'll start seeing later on. It happens throughout the series, where at times like the Gundam can shoot, one shot with his beam rifle, and then it's like a machine gun almost. Same thing with the gun cannon and the gun tank. Same thing with DOMs, or even with Gelgoogs later on, where it's just like they're in by machine guns or the GIMs. I want to say GMs. There's always an argument between GM and GIMs. I like to call them a GM. I don't know, but I'm gonna call it. I'll flex between the two. It's all preference. That's Shadow. Anyways. But yeah, it felt like you can hear like pew, 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 like all this firing, and it reminds me a lot like watching G.I. Joe. So that's one thing that kind of like is a downer for me. I'm like, I want this to be a little bit more realistic. It didn't make sense at times. This is supposed to be a real robot, so it's like you had this little bit of an expectation. But outside of that, I mean, those are some of the things I wanted to get off right off the bat about the negativities I had about the series overall. Because I have, as much as there are negatives about watching the series and like there's things you can pick apart, there's a whole lot more that I can talk about and I can gush about for hours about what I love about this series. But I'm going to try and keep it short for you guys. I know the review is already kind of long enough, so I'm going to try and keep it within relative time. I mean, we're already at 16 minutes, so let me try and make sure. Let me see here. Oh, okay. I apologize. I skipped ahead here, but so what I wanted to talk next about is just like, so the one thing about the original Gundam series is of course, I think the one thing that hits hard and well with Gundam is the theme about war, and it's pretty rock solid throughout the entire series. Gundam is known for the main theme that war is terrible, war sucks. But I feel like the original does such a great job emphasizing this. I say this because, yes, the other series kind of followed with the original, but the original kind of set that precedent. And this original did a really good job because, how I put this is like, if you look back to other animes or other shows where you talk about certain sides and stuff like that, you kind of get an idea of like, the opposing forces and stuff like that. And we're really on one side and not so much as the other, but we don't see so much of that. And we see more about the side that we're focusing on, right? What Gundam does, and does a fantastic job of, is focusing not only on the primary side that our main heroes are in, but also on the other side too. And they present each side like there is no clear-cut good or bad guy. We get to see a lot of interactions between Zeon and the Federation, people on White Base dealing with people in the Federation themselves, and then we can see on the third-person perspective of like things that are happening within Zeon itself. We also get a lot of like these human reactions, these human interactions, and I think that's what really hits home, with the Gundam series. A really, really good example of this is like in episode 8, which I'm showing right here, with the whole mother wanted, like, when they were getting off of White Base, they were trying to get the refugees to safe areas, and this mother really wanted to go back to her hometown and show her son her hometown. And, they were talking about it throughout the entire episode, and let me see if I don't, sorry. Again, I hodgepodge a lot of these images as much as I could to correlate to what I'm talking about. But with the mother here, and the whole episode was like them getting there. Of course, Zeon ends up getting involved with everything, and with all things said and done, I think it was funny how the episode started off like, we're trying to find this town. Oh, I don't remember there's this giant lake here. And then at the end of the episode, as the mother's trying to is with the two pilots in that ship, after it had been shot down, if I remember correctly, by the Gundam, the pilot, the main person, tells her, why are you not with the other group? Why are you walking away from them? It's like, oh, I'm trying to find my hometown. I wanted to go to my hometown to live there with my son. Oh, this is your hometown. It was blown up, and it's now a crater and a giant lake. And it was kind of like heartbreaking right there. It's like, it's so like that human expectation, that human want of like that sympathy. I don't know how to describe it. It's like, it's just so like, oh man, like, well, that kind of moment is throughout the entire series. There's multiple instances of this. Another one I wanted to point out too, very similar to this one, and I don't have a screenshot of it, was like in the 12th episode. Yeah, I keep specific notes on these. On the 12th episode, you get like Frau, Kika, Katz, and Let's, and even like the Zeon soldiers when they were going through the thunder clouds, and they were like getting scared by thunder, and they were saying like, "Oh, it's a new Federation weapon. Oh, it's a new Zeon weapon," and then they were being corrected like, "Oh no, this is a natural occurrence on Earth." And it goes right back to what I kind of want to harken back to, is like way earlier on with the whole idea with Zeon, is that like everyone's like not used, like, again, this is a human thing, is that they never got the chance to live on Earth, and they never got to experience these things, and to have a reaction like that towards like, oh, thunder, something that is so common to us for the most part, but people who've never seen it, I thought it was like small little details that gives a little bit of humanity towards the series. It's not like where thunder happens, like, oh, okay, that's thunder, whatever, like most of us would do, or, you know, some of us would just be scared of it. But they had a reaction more so of like, of never seeing it and not knowing what it was. And I thought that, again, was just small little details alongside with the bigger ones too, of, you know, just these human reactions and interactions. Another one, obviously I spoil it a little bit, but episode 25 through 27, dealing with Miharu and her siblings. I love the whole like little story about her. I'm like, she's doing what she can. Their parents, not her, their parents are dead. They're doing what they can to survive in this really, really terrible war. And they had to resort to doing some pretty awful things. In this case, for Miharu, she had to become a spy and get herself in situations where it could get her killed. And she's doing everything she can for her siblings, to be the bigger sister towards them. So, like, seeing that, even Kai picked up on this too, and he's trying to be the good character. And going a little bit, I'm not trying to spoil a little bit too much of what I'm going to be talking about next, but again, all these human interactions, all these human reactions. Of course, Miharu unfortunately dies. Well, as far as we can understand, dies, but she gets thrown off the gun parry when the missile gets launched, when she manually launches it. And seeing how Kai reacts towards this and develops as a character because of this, it's again that human reaction, like not wanting to see someone, not wanting to lose someone, and not wanting to see someone end up like that. The series really, really just dives into a lot of those core concepts right there. The other thing I really liked about this whole human interaction, let me see if I don't spoil it too much. Oh, okay, we got more. Oh, I pressed wrong, but I apologize. Aha, there we go. Is, again, I mentioned about the whole human interaction and reactions, is that the show isn't just about Omro. The show is about everybody in the entire world right now. Mostly we're focused on the crew of the White Base. So not just Omro, but we got Frau, Mirai, Noah, or I said Noah, Bright, Sayla, Ryu, Hayato, and Kai. And we also got other people too, like Job, or Tamarin. I'll be mentioning him very shortly. I keep hinting at a lot of things. But it's very much so the interactions about the other characters around us too. I think we also, let me see, yeah. So we get these interactions with the characters. We see them constantly grow. Every single character is different from the point that they started in the series to the point that they ended off in the entire series. Throughout, as I mentioned, just like with Kai's incident, losing Miharu, we got other characters such as like when we lose Ryu, for an example, or we lose Matilda. Even she was a minor character enough too, but still has an impact on all of our crew members and how they react and develop from these situations, these terrible, tragic moments that really impact and alter them. Again, hammering home that war is horrible, war is terrible, war sucks. War makes people do things that they don't want to do or have to do. Like when Omro crashes down after realizing that he's killing people and stuff like that. It's not just G.I. Joe shooting something. That's one thing that kind of like offsets me, like I mentioned before, like the G.I. Joe shooting stuff. But when you really think about it, like every mobile suit gets blown up, there's a person in there. Every ship that gets blown up, you're looking at like more than like 20 to 50 people, a crew of people dying. And then you get the whole idea of like, we're hooked on to White Base. And we're hooked onto these specific characters. And you really start thinking about like, man, it makes you concerned or worry about these characters. And speaking of which, we get other characters too, even though we don't get a whole lot to their stories, but like, not just with Garmazabi, but also with Iselina, for an example, or with Rumble Raw and Oman. We get a lot of sense of these characters, and we get a lot of this like growth from them too. Everybody has a personality. Everybody is not something that's just forgettable. Everybody is a likable character for the most part. Some are excluded, like Gira and Cassilia. You can even see like certain characters, like Joaquin, to an extent, Joaquin, because he changes, or certain other characters, like General Revel too. There is no good or bad necessarily on each side. For as much as they're good on one side, there is good on the other, and as much as they're bad on the other, there's bad on the other side too. Gundam really shows, like, at least the original Mobile Suit Gundam really shows that nice depiction, like, there is no true good or bad. Each side has its own fair share of good and bad weighted out. Almost equally, I would say. And again, we get, like, these, like, human interactions, these human behaviors and mannerisms that just makes the series, like, a little bit more than just, oh, it's just doing this, oh, it's just doing that. What I find, like, a lot of anime to this day kind of lacking this humanity behind it. A lot of it's this pseudo dramatization or whatnot, but I feel like a lot of what Gundam tries to portray does give that. And I think it really helps out. Fun fact too, that the director Yoshihiro, forgive me, I'm mispronouncing his name, Tomino, he served in World War II and used a lot of his own experiences and what he had not felt, but just went through too, and imported that into the series itself. So I feel like you can kind of get a lot of that soul, a lot of that humanity from this series. So another thing is like the talk about like, like our crew members and feeling attached to them. I want to say that, I feel like Mobile Suit Gundam was kind of like the original Game of Thrones. And I talk specifically about Ryu. Harkening back to the whole G-Armor docking stuff, that was totally unnecessary, totally boring, totally like just eating up stock footage just so they can eat up time of the show and then not having to pay more for animation budget. But when we came to the concept of Ryu here, it's one of those, like, you take things for granted. And I think this series really does a great job of like, hey, you really feel for these characters, you care about them, but you go, at least how I felt when I first time watched this series back in 2000, I was like, oh, none of the characters are going to die. Nothing's ever going to happen to them. And then we come across, if I'm not mistaken, it was episode 19, Sorrow and Hatred. And we get the death of Ryu. And it's not because he died for no reason. He died valiantly, sacrificing himself, saving Omro and the crew of White Base from Amon's anger and revenge. And his death, I felt, was the most poignant death in the entire series. It was the most hard-hitting one, too. Because he was the first character. Like, sure, we had a couple of characters that died on White Base. Not ones that we really, truly had a connection to. Like, we had the, I believe he was the commander. He died after the first few episodes. We had another death for, I think... Yeah, because we would have like many crew members die because at that point, Rumble Raw had already attacked White Base, and we already had lost a few crew members there. But they were no-namers, unfortunately. I hate to say that, but they were no-namers. But the build-up towards this episode, Ryu was always involved in conversations with every single character. He had an impact towards everybody's decisions, an impact towards everybody's like mentality and morale. And when he had died, it really shook the foundation. I felt like at least it took a different paradigm shift with the entire series and really hit home like, hey, this wasn't just some happy-go-lucky, even though it was real robot and whatnot, everything's going to be happy-go-lucky. I'm like, somebody in the cast actually died. Someone that was important enough. Somebody that was reran through a few handful of episodes of the same dumb stock footage stuff, and he's no longer there. Sad thing too is that he's constantly shown at the very end of the series and in the opening too. So it's like Ryu's gone. Ryu's gone, man. And I thought that was something that hit home very, very well. Again, the importance of the show's about that cast and crew, about the crew of White Base. A lot of these human reactions and interactions that really drive home what Gundam is about. The other thing too was that Omro's parents. I think this one was a little bit rough too, focusing mostly on Omro, of course, where we saw in the beginning of the series where he's with his dad, and his dad was really focused about the Gundam and so much about that. We didn't know much about his mom until we came across his mother. And I mean, as much as she loved him, and it was kind of strange, her distance between her and Omro and her imagining of what her son is and what the war has done, again, shows us this, that humanity alongside with war is terrible. Like, what has it done to Omro? But at the same time, what has it done to their relationship? I mean, their relationship was already strained to begin. They were a distant mother and son. But then Omro's mother was not willing to try to accept the fact that Omro had to do what he needed to do to survive, such as shoot at the soldiers, at the Zeon soldiers, and not wanting to, like, choose between her son or another person's life. And I thought that was like the same concept. Like, you would rather have that soldier shoot me than me shoot the soldier, Mom. And I was like, whew, that was that's pretty rough when your own mother was basically saying it's okay for you to die just so someone else can live. I think that says a whole lot about the mother-son dynamics right there. It also goes furthermore, several episodes once we finally get out of Earth's atmosphere and back into space, we come across Temray, Omro's father again. Oh, he actually survived the first episode, but he's not quite the same. Well, I mean, he seemed the same how he left him. He's just obsessed with improving the Gundam or whatnot, but he didn't care about Omro or anything like that. And I think it's a little bit tragic here because Omro comes to realize that. I mean, even though he realizes that the components are junk, and to some extent, he realizes his father probably had suffered brain damage from the lack of oxygen or oxygen deprivation when he was in space. We don't know the circumstances of what happened to Temray and how he survived his ordeals, but what we do know is that he kind of lost his mind. And it kind of stems down to, it's kind of like a zombie mindset, right? Our most primal, more basic sense. And we would focus on the things that are important to us, right? Unfortunately, the most important thing to Temray, Omro's father, wasn't so much as the importance of Omro and Omro being alive. It was the importance of making the Gundam better. And we see Omro's frustration and sadness after that, and I could totally understand that one. And again, right back to that human interaction and human reaction. It's just, it hits home on a lot of fronts. And I feel like Omro kind of got a lot of the everyone gets a short end of the stick, but we get to see a little bit more with the short end of the stick of his upbringing and how he became to be. We kind of get the ideas like, why was he like the way he was at the very beginning of the series, and then we kind of see a culmination between the two of his parents. Even though the war had offset in some direction, we see the most primal of his two parents. In the most extreme situations, in the most extreme circumstances. Again, war is terrible, and it brings the worst in us, right? And in the moments where it was so critical to be cared about, to be loved, to be wanted as a child, right? And for a mother to say, I would rather you to be shot than you to take someone else's life. And the father you had looked up to only caring about some other created machine and not something he did create himself. It says a whole lot. And I thought that was a very strong thing within the series itself. Granted, these are two separate episodes that are spanned out through the entire series. And they were just so very poignant moments, I felt, that it just stuck out and hit home with the original series. That being said, kind of speaking about favorite moments, can't forget about the salt episode. Gotta talk about how important salt is, because salt is an important mineral for your body, folks. Don't neglect salt. You need it in your diet. I'm sorry. But this is Tamarin, the cruise chef. He shows up in a few episodes. But this is actually kind of an important episode. It was Saylet's Agony, because she does, if I'm not mistaken here, hijack the Gundam and does some pretty stupid things with it. But we also get multiple points throughout the entire episode about talking about how important salt is, and Whiteface is almost out of salt. And guess what? We finally can now solve our salt shortage because we found a lake with salt. I'm sorry, but that was, as much as people junk on that episode and that entire PSA ordeal, I actually love it. I thought it was cheesy and funny. Another one thing that I really did like in this series was, now, granted, I'm going to say this earlier on, and I'll mention this later on. The fights with Odessa Day, and Jaburo were super short-lived. They were like, well, granted, the other fights were like an episode each. But for something as important as this, I thought it was very, very short. But the one thing I really did like one of those like awesome moments, was like when Char first, like when he reappears, and he reappears in Jaburo, fighting in his Red Zagok, and then he hits that, like he just pierces through that GM, and then he just does this super cool like posing where he gets down, and then the explosion happens, and he just like rises up slowly and just like stares off like, there you are, Gundam. It's like super menacing, such a cool shot. Always gotta admire that one. Speaking of Char moments, because Char has a lot of cool moments. I don't have a whole lot of highlights here, but man, he does get a really awesome shot in. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. Here, right, I'll jump right here. Best freaking headshot in the entire I've ever seen. I can't see in the entire series because that's the only headshot, but wow. He does this with a bazooka and gets a kill shot on Katsila Izabi and taking down her Zanzibar at the same time. That's a kill streak if I ever heard one or ever seen one. But that's incredible. That was just an amazing moment. You see that, and it's in the last episode. It's like one of those like, oh my god kind of moments. Like, whoa! So it was crazy. Of course, there is no more awesome moment besides the headshot in the entire original Gundam series, besides the epic last stand shot between the Gundam and the Zeong. They say the Jeong in the English dub, but for me, when I'm reading the name Zeong, I'm like Zeong. Sorry, but that shot is just amazing. It's funny because it feels like it was a little bit more sped up and not as epic as it was before, but I mean, rewatching it, it was still such a cool moment. I mean, even before the epic shot too, the fight between Char and Omro in the suits before they were like kind of like piecing at each other off was also a cool fight. Speaking of cool fights too, let me see if I have it. Yeah, I really did enjoy, as much as I mentioned, Odessa Day and Jaburo were very lackluster. We got a lot more when it came to Solomon and Abaraku fights. I guess more G.I. Joe kind of stuff, but we actually got to see a lot more action sequences, a lot more fighting. So that was like actually kind of cool and enjoyable. At the same time, tragic because you're realizing like, hey, these are a lot of people dying. So it's like it kind of weighs in all that points right there. I'm gonna try and jump ahead a little bit here too. Yeah, here we go. So, another thing I want to talk about, a little bit more commentary too, as I mentioned way earlier on here in the review, was the talk about shortening the episode. So the pacing in the first few episodes were kind of slow. It was, getting Whiteface off of Side 7 into, getting to the moon and into the Earth and all that other stuff that follows through. Everything after, like a little bit after that, I think I would say the first 5 episodes or so, everything started building up steam, getting more pace, and then the series kind of took that little turn of like, kind of like monster of the week. So you got new suit of the week almost. And following a little bit more alongside the war, of course, building towards what's going on towards the end. However, like I mentioned, because the series was facing cancellation, the last few episodes, or in this case here, it felt like the last 7 episodes, really took a hardcore crunch. And Tomino was trying to go with the whole, okay, so I gave you guys the idea of war is terrible, war is awful. I showed you how it impacts people at a more humane level, as well as how it impacts our crew members on the white base. But now I want to make things a little bit more interesting here and explain why war happens. And so he brings into this concept of new types, and it was kind of planted throughout the entire series very subtly, where they mentioned about like psychics or like being able to predict things and those sort of things. Towards the last 12 episodes or so, we get more fleshed out with new types. So we start seeing like more new type based machines, like the Brabro and Brabro with Charlie Brule and so forth, the Elamith, and they try to. They don't really touch on it much more. We get to see this a lot more with all the other series where they talk about Zeon Daikun's ideology about new types and how they are the next evolution in the human race. I'm talking about stuff that's not even part of this series, but it's important because we don't get that in those last several episodes. We don't get any of that. That context is given later on. Otherwise, you watch the series as it is and you get kind of like lost. And when we get to episode 40, mind blown when it comes to Lala soon. But the whole ideology, and I want to preface this, is that Tomio wanted to talk about the idea that new types is the next evolutionary step in people where we become more attuned to each other. And that maybe new types would be able to find ways that we can communicate with each other better and build that connection together. Because what caused this war to start off with is this miscommunication in a sense. We also got different people with different ideologies and varying with each other, but we all have the same kind of thing that we want to live, that we want to be in peace, and we don't want to enact upon our like anger and hatred, and that only stems because of what war produces, which is the deaths of people that we love and care about. So what we kind of get a few episodes is when we first meet Lala and Omro and them meeting with each other, and they kind of have that little click, that like it didn't make sense at first. Like if you watch a series and you watch, it's like, why does Omro even like Lala? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They didn't even really talk that much. And the ideology behind the new type is that they can communicate with each other. They can feel or be more in tune with each other. And maybe words were not even necessary. And that's where there's that finer connection. And then it becomes a kind of a subtle argument between how Omro was more connected with Lala than Char was ever connected with Lala. Char was connected to Lala in more of that sense of that humanistic, nurturing sense, where Omro and Lala were more attuned via the kind of like the nature versus nurture. They were naturally in tune with each other, whereas Char and Lala were nurtured into each other, if that makes sense. And the episodes get really, really trippy. You get to see freaking Lala melting and going everywhere. The ideology behind, new types being able to spread, understand like this wave of emotion or wave of feelings, this wave of pressure and so forth coming in. It's super weird and very meta. I don't know how else to really describe it, but it's supposed to be this connection. And so when we watch it, it didn't make sense at first. I mean, when I first watched it, I was like, what? And of course, many years later and many rewatchings of the original Gundam, connecting everything back together, the whole new type ideology. And then you get that whole nature versus nurture argument with Omro and Char when it comes to Lala. But episode 40, the Cosmic Glow. Super trippy episode. I mean, up until that point, Gundam was very straightforward, real robot. There were some, comical moments in the series and so forth, but it's been pretty consistent with realism And when people die, they die. There's no plot armor, plot shield per se. And then you get to this. And this just throws everything out the window about what you knew about what Gundam was about. Because as soon as they talk about new types, it just got crazy. But yeah, that was something I wanted to talk about. And something I appreciate when it came to the whole concept of new types. That being said, overall, the original Gundam, how do I put this? So, even though it is the first of many series within the franchise, it is one of, if not one of the best in the whole lot. Only a couple of other series actually rival the original Gundam for top contender for the best Gundam series. Yes, it is old. It is dated. It does have some kind of like hard animation go by. Sometimes it's kind of hokey at points. Especially towards the end of the last few episodes, it kind of feels kind of crunchy with pacing going towards the end and with all the craziness of the new types. But what really drives the show was, again, the characters, the crew of White Base, the sides between Federation and Zeon, the interactions we have with these characters, and those human reactions and interactions, what it's caused by this war. It is amazing. I love everything. It's funny because when I rewatched this entire series, again, this is 5th, 6th, or 7th, I can't remember. I've seen the series one too many times. But I'm like, I can get into the series, I can watch this, and I feel comfortable throughout. I never felt bored. I never felt like, oh man, there's a few filler episodes. You know, some people hate that Time Be Still episode, which is, I think, episode 14 or 15, where they put bombs on the gun, like Zeon soldiers put bombs on the Gundam, and they just kind of like walk away with it. And I honestly have to say that I actually liked that episode. It was fun to watch. Throughout the entire series, never was bored, and that's the most important thing. Never was bored. Never was like, oh man, I gotta really watch this episode. Speaking of which, no, again, I did not review the 13th episode. I think it's the 13th or 14th episode. The actual 13th, 14th episode, which is Dawn's Island. But that was a lost episode, and it was not included in the Blu-ray collection. In addition to that one, I have actually watched it in the past, and it is actually one of the few filler episodes where I'm like, you can toss that out the window, and I would not care at all about it. Same thing that can be said about the whole putting bombs on the Gundam again in Jaburo. I digress, though. So at the time of this review, this is where I say that where Gundam is a very polarized series for me at times, because it's depending on my mood or like what I came back after rewatching other things or other, like other series and coming back to it. Because I can flux between giving this 4 out of 5 or giving it the perfect score of 5 out of 5. So I'm going to just say it at this time, because usually, again, I flux between those two scores. So it's really, really hard. You ever want to ask me again, you can ask me in a few months from now, hey, Briston, how do you feel about Mobile Suit Gundam? What's your scoring for that one? So I'm going to lay this down to rest here, because it gets brought up a couple times with friends and stuff like that. At this time, after having watched the entire series from yesterday to today, finishing it off, coming off of it fresh, still in my mind, this is how I'm going to score Gundam. Mobile Suit Gundam gets a 4 out of 5. So yeah, a lot of things went into that one. Again, I already gave you my negatives. It's not a whole lot that I'd be dismissive about the series. A lot of people talk about the series and go oh man, it's so garbagey because of the animation. Animation doesn't bother me none. Even though you get some really wonky animation or really inconsistent drawings about the suits and characters, Didn't bother me none. Some of the storyline stuff is kind of dated. Doesn't bother me none. But really, what drives it home for me is the characters, the interactions that everybody has, the developing stories. Every single character is dynamic. Even like the bad guy. I don't want to say bad guys because I'm Xeon. I like Xeon, but they're very dynamic. That being said, so I just want to kind of tease you guys for the future. I'm going to try and keep this a little bit more consistent. I'm surprised I talked for about 50 minutes now, but I want to try and be a little bit consistent. I'm doing something, again, a little bit more different here because YouTube is not a lot of fun for me, and if you go to my YouTube channel, I've done some, other reviews where I actually, utilize actual footage, but because YouTube is a pain, and I love them copyright strikes. I'm going to try and do it this format here. I think it's kind of a unique format. I think it's going to be kind of nice too. Especially I can chat with you guys right as soon as I finish my review. I will be looking in just a short little bit. But I want to give you a little bit of a precursor before anything else. So with that said, the next one I'm going to be reviewing. So to give you context too, I'm going to be reviewing the entire Gundam franchise of what I currently have. Just reviewing that one. I'm going to do it chronologically within Century time frame. So right now we're going to do UC Century only. And then I'm going to branch off into the other centuries after this. So right now, because we came off fresh off of the original Gundam, I'm going to go ahead and review next is Mobile Suit Gundam, the trilogy, or the movie trilogy. But I'm not going to leave you guys kind of hanging high and dry with that one there. I'm also going to be reviewing Mobile Suit Gundam Origin. Let me try and there you go. Origin. Now, I can already hear some people balking at me going like, well, why didn't you just watch Origin first? Because technically that's the first in the timeline. It takes place years before the original Gundam series, and it has a whole lot more. For me personally, I've already watched Origin once. This will be my second time watching it, and I felt like Origin has a lot more respects to the original series. And not being able to catch on to the original series and then watching these beforehand, I wouldn't have the same appreciation for it. Similar ideology is why I'm going to watch the trilogy movie next, is because I want a nice, fresh comparison between the original series and the movie trilogy. Personally, I really enjoy the movie trilogy. I've watched this just as many times as the original. So I can't wait to rewatch this again. Again, fresh off the boat from the original, we're going to go right into the original movies, trying to catch on those little comparisons and see which one I like preferably better. Is the movie superior than the series? That's a good question. Preliminary thoughts, folks. I think that the movie is going to do a lot better than the series, but who knows? My initial reaction is that the series has a lot more things that are flushed out, more brought out. The movies have to contend with lesser time frames, so they're chopping and cutting everything and putting whatever they can in the most Frankenstein manner possible. But they could do it in a more poignant way too. It's kind of like that saying, sometimes less words are better than more. So I think that it would do something great. As for Origin, I already gave you my explanation on that one. I can't wait to jump into that one. Watching Origin, and then after coming off of both of those, being able to appreciate the original more, because we're going to deal with characters more so that were obviously killed off or still survived after the 1 year war, but have more of a fonder appreciation of all the nuances, a lot of the subtle things that they can harken back to the original series. So I'm looking forward to that one there. And I can already tell that a lot of people are going to be very excited for me to review this stinky movie. Nah, I tease. I put this in a baggie for this, but yeah, I tease. But yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be going through a lot of the series. It's going to take me a while. This is going to be a fun little side thingy. I got some time left. I was hoping to keep this at least like 30 minutes or 10 minutes. I knew that wasn't probably going to happen. I'm going to try and do something a little bit more, how do I put this? A little bit more finessed when it came to this. Again, I just finished the series today. I spent like 10 hours plus watching this. I watched some of it last night, and then I just watched the rest of it today on my day off. And I wanted to do something that was unique, and I wanted to do a review, and I thought a live stream review would be kind of cool. That said, too, I just hodgepodge. That's why I kept on delaying. It took me like an hour just to. I already had what I wanted to say, but I wanted to get a little bit more. So I hope you guys really did enjoy the review, get a little bit more insight. Again, this is not a comprehensive review or anything like that. This is just my thoughts on the series, some things I picked out and what I really, really liked. I've written essays about the original Gundam, and I'm not going to go into that. I kind of touch on some of those subjects, such as war sucks, war is terrible, and even the concept of new types. So I thought it was just fun to share a little bit of that if you don't know about that already. But let me go ahead and jump onto the stream, see if there's anybody there. Anybody said anything? I don't see anything here. Okay, it's all good. But if you did miss this out, no worries. This will be on my YouTube channel under the same name of Absolute Nerd. If you haven't already, make sure to follow me on my Twitch channel. Follow me on my Twitter, where I announce when I go live, when I do my live streams. And of course, subscribe to me and like the video on my YouTube channel. For those who are curious, when I do my live streams, currently right now, I live stream after 12 p.m. and after 12 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. As for these live stream reviews, though, they might not be after 12 p.m., considering that I did this for like an hour, and I'm like, I don't want to run late or anything like that. So, I might be doing those just exclusively at night. Or, if things looking good or whatnot, or I have time off, I will try and do it earlier in the day so people can watch it live and, can comment. Other than that, do want to thank you guys for watching this live stream and watching the video. And until the next time, catch you guys on the next live stream. Y'all have a good night now.